All right. Hi, everyone. If you can hear me and see the PowerPoint, I just need a couple of you to chat yes in the box so I can make sure that the sound is working. Awesome. Cool. Got it. Thank you. Thank you all for attending. If you're listening in, you are a new or returning grantee or subgrantee of the AmeriCorps State and National program for the 2019 program year. As mentioned in our invitation, we encourage programs to begin the enrollment process for AmeriCorps members as soon as possible. This includes taking proactive steps to plan for member recruitment, citizenship verification, and national service criminal history check processes well in advance of your expected member start dates. To make sure you are equipped and ready to go, we are providing you with this training today. My name is Brittany Tonning, and I am a program officer for the AmeriCorps State and National program. I am joined by Sarah Yu, our senior program and project specialist here at CNCS, who is going to be monitoring the chat box throughout the training. I'm additionally joined by Liz Young and Jim Stone, who will be here to help address some of our National Service Criminal History Check questions if they come up. If you do have questions, we will be following the chat box as best we can. There are several hundred of you registered today, so it is not likely that we will get to every single question, but we will attempt to answer as many as possible. I will be pausing after each slide to allow participants to read all the content, so there will be various pauses as we move along. So if you don't hear me talking, don't worry, I'm still here. We'll just keep moving on. Again, due to the large volume of participants, please be respectful of the chat box. It can be difficult to follow the chat, presentation, and my voice all at the same time, so keep them in mind for your fellow grantees. If you have specific questions as they relate to your program, please reach out to your state commission, prime grantee, or program officer. Additional resources and where to go with questions, including direct links, will be available throughout this presentation. Get my mouse. There we go. All right. The purpose of this training is to provide guidance to AmeriCorps program users regarding member enrollment processes and requirements for the upcoming 2019 program year. As I mentioned earlier, we encourage programs to begin the member enrollment process as early as possible to allow for sufficient time to meet enrollment requirements. For those of you listening who are subgrantees, your prime grantee or state commission likely has additional guidance regarding your specific program's enrollment process. Please make sure you are aware of the additional requirements or procedures and use them as a resource. I do want to note that new programs who do not currently have access to EGrants may find this training a little confusing. Please make sure to reach out to your prime grantee, or if you are a prime grantee, your program officer for more guidance when you reach this point. All right. To get us started, I would like to introduce you all to our enrollment process flowchart. This chart has been posted to our Managing AmeriCorps Grants page in an editable format. The page is linked here. Just click on the Member Enrollment tab to find the resources we are referencing today. Additionally, this PowerPoint will be available in the near future for you to utilize and revisit at your own convenience. This flowchart is the starting point for the entire presentation. Don't worry about not being able to read each detail here in this slide. We will be zooming in to various parts throughout the rest of the presentation. As you can see, the flowchart includes a key in the top right-hand corner that indicates who is taking the action described. CNCS is the green circle, program staff in the blue square, member applicants in orange, and the Social Security Administration gets their own purple triangle. To the left, you can see that we broke this process out into 4 sections, phases 1 through 3, and the final step, which occurs in the EGrants portal, indicated with our lovely orange color. I will pause at the beginning of each new phase to allow you to ask questions about what was covered in the previous slides. This gives us time to address a portion of the questions as we move along. Please note that this presentation is really focused on the enrollment process. While various aspects such as member recruitment and national service criminal history checks occur at the same time, we will attempt to stick to how it relates specifically to the enrollment process, as supplemental materials are available in other recorded webinar trainings and on our website. Let's dive in and get started with Phase 1. As I mentioned, the flowchart includes a key in the right-hand corner, which we have pulled out here for your reference. Blue boxes are you, our program staff. We will begin with the award notification and highlight 2 essential steps that need to occur prior to enrollment here in Phase 1. I want to quickly state that when I refer to direct grantees, I am including both national direct and tribal grantees moving forward. Direct grantees and state commissions will receive their award notification in April and their notice of grant award prior to the requested start date in their grant. Direct grantees and state commissions can access this notice in EGrants as shown here. Subgrantees will experience a different process of notification depending on your prime grantee or your state commission procedures for award notification. We wanted to provide direct grantees and state commissions with a reference of what the notice of grant award looks like. It is important to note the grant ID, project and budget periods, awarded funds, member positions, and any special conditions on the grant can be found in this document. This is a good time to also remind you that this PowerPoint will be available for you to access on your own time and pace as I'm moving through these beginning slides quickly. In this first phase, we highlighted 2 essential steps that need to occur prior to enrollment that were included to the side of the actual flowchart. This is because these steps do not occur at a specific point in the process, but still need to be addressed before you reach the orange section, or before you go to actually enroll the applicant in EGrants. The first bullet point states that programs must set up operating sites and service locations in the portal. Setting up operating sites in the portal is an additional step for direct grantees that state and subgrantees do not need to complete. This step is required before direct grantees can issue member invitations. We've included a link to our knowledge network here that provides additional guidance on how to complete this step in addition to this screenshot. As you can see, when in the portal, the program must go to Manage Programs and click the link on the bottom right of your screen to set up an operating site. If member invitations and service opportunity listings are not associated with the correct operating site, it may complicate the member enrollment steps later on in the process. All programs must set up service locations in the portal, as this is what members will be assigned to. Again, please utilize our program management tutorials on the Knowledge Network for detailed steps on this process, as we will not be going through this in detail today. Here, we have provided you a quick snapshot for you to know where to access service locations in the portal. The second essential step that needs to occur prior to enrollment is to submit a service opportunity listing in AmeriCorps. Per CNCS policy, all grantees are required to post available member service opportunities in AmeriCorps portal. Below, you will see that we included a link to the service opportunity listing resources on our website that includes PowerPoint step-by-step instructions, an outline of our requirements, and a template for you to use. Here's what this step looks like in the eGrants portal. Grantees may create new service listings by checking the box indicated. Or, if you're a previous grantee, you may modify an existing listing. Grantees may use a variety or combination of strategies for member recruitment based on your program model and needs. We made it through phase 1. That phase was pretty short, but I will take a moment to see if we have any general questions that we can address now.
Sure. So we have one question from Monica on the chat asking about if they have old service locations or duplicate service locations that they're no longer using. The question is, should those locations be deleted or voided in some way? I'm going to let Jim answer that question. No, he's pointing at me. All right, I will answer that question. But we do want you to only have active the service locations that you are currently using. So there is a way to inactivate service locations in the portal. I'm looking at Jim. I don't believe that we can delete them because the historical record needs to be there if they've been used in the past, but you can make them inactive. And so if you go into the portal and you go to either manage programs or manage service locations, you will be able to do some actions related to the service location.
Yeah, the reason you can't delete service locations is that if a member was ever assigned to that service location, it becomes part of their service record, and so you won't be able to delete it.
All right, so thanks for the question, Monica. Question from Kate about if the program has both half-time and full-time members, can they submit multiple service opportunity listings? And the answer is yes. You can have multiple service opportunity listings for each type of service opportunity you are offering. So if you have full-time and less than full-time opportunities, they can have separate opportunity listings. Question from Robin about the Notice of Grant Award and whether a subgrantee has access to the Notice of Grant Award in eGrants. The answer is no. The direct grantee, or Robin, in your case, the commission, is the one that has access to the Notice of Grant Award. So if there are, for example, special conditions that relate specifically to a subgrantee, then it is the prime grantee's responsibility to notify the subgrantee about those special conditions. Folks who are on the phone, if you did join in via a phone line, please make sure that you're muting your line. We did hear a little bit of a break-in of some conversation there. I believe that that is all the questions we have at the moment, Brittany, so let's carry on. And for folks who have other questions related to phase 1, don't worry, you have not missed out. You can still enter questions into the chat box, and we will do our best to answer those later in the presentation.
All right, on to phase 2. Here's where we are going to see the member applicant steps come in. We have zoomed into the image of phase 2 on this page. We are going to discuss how members can apply to your program, what CNCS requires for member screening, how to select members, and what the member steps are to enroll. Notice that there are essentially 2 separate tracks for members to apply and be selected for your program. In the first track, members are applying and being selected via the My AmeriCorps portal. In the second, member applicants are applying through an external process that your program has established. In the middle of this process, we've included member screening. All applicants will need to be screened for eligibility and criminal history. We placed the screen member icon here to signify that at this point in the process, you should have enough information, name, age, etc., to start the screening process. Notice the stopwatch symbol. We've included this icon to note that this process requires additional time. I do want to point out that while the screening process can start here, it does not end here, unlike other steps in the flowchart. Since the initiation of the state and FBI checks require member consent, which is likely to not be obtained until after the member accepts the invitation to serve, and since the final verification of SSN and citizenship occurs after the member selection, the member screening process can continue all the way through to the big blue box at the bottom of the flowchart. Finally, in this phase, we will discuss the member invitation, acceptance, and enrollment form completion and highlight an additional step for applicants who have previously served as an AmeriCorps member. As mentioned, member applicants may apply to an AmeriCorps program on one of two tracks, either through the MyAmeriCorps portal or outside MyAmeriCorps. When you are creating your service opportunity listing, as noted in the essential steps prior to enrollment, you will have the opportunity to indicate whether or not a member applicant can apply via MyAmeriCorps to your program. For programs who select yes, members may apply through track 1, the MyAmeriCorps portal. If you choose no, this is because your program has its own recruitment process external to MyAmeriCorps, which I will refer to as track 2. If this is the case, you will be asked to provide additional details about where applicants can receive information to apply to your program in your service opportunity listing as shown here on the screen. Regardless of which track members apply through, all members are required to be screened for eligibility and criminal history. We have included the following screening guidance because this is an essential step in member enrollment. But we are not including every detail to this process as this is covered in other recorded webinars and resource materials. In this slide, we have linked to our Code of Federal Regulations as a reference for determining member eligibility. Please be familiar with these regulations to ensure that all AmeriCorps members that you enroll are in fact eligible for service. In addition to our eligibility requirements, programs must conduct a national service criminal history check prior to the start of service. Moving forward, I will often refer to this as NSCHC. The NSCHC check includes a National Sex Offender Public Website Check, also referred to as the NSOPW, and the initiation of state and/or FBI checks. I'm going to say it again. Please become familiar with this process by reviewing our National Service Criminal History Check Manual, which is linked here. I'm going to pause here to note that there are 2 spots where we have included the stopwatch symbol in the flowchart. This is to let you know that these points in the enrollment process can take additional time, and your program should be prepared to adjust. National Service Criminal History Checks and the member screening process is one of those key points. Subgrantees should reach out to your prime grantee or state commission to understand your program's specific requirements regarding NSCHC, as what we are discussing here are the basic CNCS requirements. CNCS recommends using our approved vendors to conduct the National Service Criminal History Check. These vendors are TrueScreen and FieldPrint, which we will highlight on the next slide. CNCS selected these specific vendors to help ensure NSCHC compliance. Again, please become familiar with our NSCHC requirements by reviewing our manuals and resources that were provided on the previous slide. Failure to conduct timely and compliant National Service Criminal History checks may delay member enrollment and can also result in sometimes significant cost disallowances to your program. As previously mentioned, these are the 2 CNCS approved vendors for NSCHC, with links to their resources from our Knowledge Network. TrueScreen is recommended for conducting the National Sex Offender Public Website Check and the state check if needed for your member applicant. For those of you who are previous grantees, you know that each state has its own considerations for conducting state checks. This individual state information link is provided. FieldPrint is the vendor for that CNCS recommends to conduct the FBI check. Again, links are provided for you to learn more about these specific processes. The times indicated here are average turnaround times. Often, you may receive results faster than indicated, and at times it could take longer. Once you have completed the screening process, including ensuring the member is eligible to serve, conducting and adjudicating the NSOPW, and initiating the state and FBI checks, you may go into EGrants and certify that this is complete. We will cover this again in the EGrants phase at the bottom of the flowchart, but thought it was important to note here that National Service Criminal History checks must be certified by checking the relevant boxes on the member enrollment form no later than the member's start date. These boxes do not need to be checked on the exact date that you completed the NSCHC, but it is good practice to check these boxes as early as possible. Remember, once you check these boxes, you are certifying that the NSOPW is complete and adjudicated, and the state and/or FBI checks have been initiated. You need to hit the Save Information button in order to record the date that you checked the box, which is shown here in this red box on the slide. I'm going to cover this specific EGrants process again in our last phase. At this point, you have started the screening process for your member applicant and determined that they are eligible to become an AmeriCorps member and you would like them to serve with your program. Remember the two tracks? Track 1, the applicant applies via My AmeriCorps, and Track 2, the applicant applied outside of My AmeriCorps. This slide is focused on the first track of accepting a member via My AmeriCorps. When you are logged on to the EGrants portal, you may review member applications based on the tabs you see in our slide. The very last tab is Selection, where you will click if you would like to select or reject the member for your program. Below, you will check the box indicating that you certify prior to enrollment the member will be determined as eligible to serve. Once you click Submit, the member applicant will be notified via email. We will show you an example of this email in just a moment. Here is our Track 2 option. In this track, the applicant has applied outside of the My AmeriCorps system. Your program has started its screening process and has decided to send an invitation to the member applicant. In the portal, your screen was going to look similar to this. On the left-hand side, you will select the Invite Members tab, which will allow you to enter the applicant's data. You will also need to select the program year, title, and service location from the drop-down list. It is important to make sure this information is correct. If you would like to send more than one invitation at a time, click Add Another to send the current invitation and then enter another. You may also just click Save and Send to complete the individual invitation. The member will be notified via email, which I'm going to show in the next slide. Here is your member applicant's view of the invitation that they received either through applying in My AmeriCorps or with your specific program. Jim here was lucky enough to be selected to serve with Whittier. He is now instructed to complete the registration and enrollment form by clicking on the link indicated. This will open up his My AmeriCorps page where he will be instructed to verify his information to open up his enrollment form. This is the member's view of the enrollment form. It's long, so we have included it on the next slide as well. Please be aware that CNCS terms and conditions state that the enrollment form must be completed by the member. EGrants will not allow programs to complete this step unless you have a waiver. Throughout your screening process, you may have learned that a member has previously served in an AmeriCorps program. It is a good idea to make sure that this member has been exited. There are various ways for the member to do this, including reaching out to their previous supervisor or checking to see if they have access to their education award, as this is only available if the member has been fully exited. Here's the second part of the member enrollment form. After they have ensured that all of the information is complete and accurate, they will click Save Information to submit the form and trigger the next steps in the process, which will bring us to phase 3. I'm going to pause here for a second, and then I'm going to turn it over to Sarah for any questions or clarifications before we move to slide 3, or phase 3. All right.
All right, you guys have been active in the chat box. Thank you. We do have a number of questions that have come in. So we will do our best to answer some. We may not be able to answer all of them, but we will do our best. Remember that you can reach out to your program officer or your prime grantee if we can't answer all of the questions. So first question from Celia. The question was, if we have started a new 3-year grant cycle, when will the grant code populate in EGrants in the Managed Programs section? So the answer is that that happens right after the notice of grant award is issued. So again, if you are a subgrantee, you'll need to reach out to your prime grantee or your commission to find out when the notice of grant award is issued. If you are a prime grantee, that should happen very quickly after you receive the notice of grant award. Question about troubleshooting the My AmeriCorps invitation. First question is when members or potential member candidates receive the invitation, what is it that they need to do? The answer is they need to click the link in the invitation that will lead them to the member portion of the enrollment form. If you have a member who does not receive the invitation, that would be a time to reach out to the National Service Hotline. It could be that the invitation went to spam. It could be there's some other technical issue with the member's email account. The hotline can help you troubleshoot that. Several folks, Elaine, Bethany, Leslie, Alexander, maybe more, asked whether TrueScreen and field print are mandatory. So we have Liz Jung here, who is on our office of chief, in the Office of the Chief Risk Officer. I'll let her answer that question.
Hi, everybody. So we're in a unique period right now. We're in the middle of the exemption period. If you are participating in the exemption period and you have surge grants, the use of TrueScreen and field print are required. If you are conducting checks outside of the exemption period, TrueScreen and field print are not required. You've got 2 options for you. You can use TrueScreen and field print, or you can go directly to nsopw.gov to do your NSOPW checks, or you can use your state repository for your state and FBI checks.
All right, thanks. And Liz, as long as you are talking, here's another question. There are consent forms built into field print and TrueScreen. Do those count as official consent forms as part of the NSCHC process?
Yes, so those forms are capturing consent on your behalf. They are allowing field print and TrueScreen to do the checks, and those are valid. If you have additional consent forms, I mean, that's fine. You can use those too.
Okay, super. Thank you. And Dana, thank you for that question. Question from Kisa or Kaisa. How early can you check the boxes? I think by boxes you're referring to the boxes related to the criminal history checks. Those should be checked once you have completed and adjudicated the National Sex Offender Public Website, or the NSOPW check, and after you have initiated the state and or FBI checks for the member candidate. We encourage you to check them as soon as you have done those things, as soon as you have completed, adjudicated the NSOPW, as soon as you have initiated the state and FBI. Question from Thomas, when do subgrantees receive notification of their award number? The answer is that is something, a notification goes to the prime grantee from CNCS, and it is the prime grantee who reaches out to subgrantees to notify them that the award has been made and to provide the award number to those subgrantees. Question about when the boxes can be checked. This is again from several folks. They wanted to verify, can we check the boxes on the member's start date? The answer is yes. So to give you an example, today is May 1st. If you check the box today, May 1st.
April
Sorry,
30th.
today's April 30th. I am a day ahead. I wish today was May 1st. All right, today's April 30th. So if you check the box to say that you have completed and adjudicated the NSOPW today, April 30th, if you check the box stating that you have initiated the state and FBI checks today, April 30th, we will talk soon about the Phase 3, the citizenship and SSN verification, but if those are verified, both of those are verified today, April 30th, then you can take the member enroll action today, April 30th. There should not be a delay. If you are experiencing a delay, there are some troubleshooting steps that you can take. We will get to those a little bit later in the presentation as part of Phase 3. So look for a slide that says, I can't take the enroll action. What should I do? We'll talk about that. But if you have done all the steps as listed on that troubleshooting slide, if you have followed the flow chart and the steps that Brittany is describing as indicated, and you are still not able to take the enroll action, you can reach out to the National Service Hotline for that. Question from Michelle. Can people still apply via AmeriCorps if we write on the service opportunity listing that we are using external applications? I am looking at Jim Stone to see if you can help with that answer. If they have indicated in the service opportunity listing that they're not accepting, that they're accepting applications outside the system, could someone still apply via AmeriCorps?
If your agency doesn't elects not to participate in that, it's not compulsory.
You can link to my AmeriCorps page if you're recruiting outside. There's a lot of different ways you can kind of use both of those processes. But a lot of that information is provided in that slide that I had that kind of outlined the service listing opportunity. There's a whole resource page that we have for you to answer some of those specific questions as well.
All right, great. Question about member invitations. Will they always come from that myAmeriCorps@americorps.gov email address? Yes, they should. So the member should look for that particular email address if they're looking for an invitation. Another question that there were, of course, the two tracks. You could have members apply either inside or outside the MyAmeriCorps system. Do both of those lead to an email that goes to the member candidate? Yes, they do. If you go through the invitation process, then the system will send an invitation to the member. If you select an application in MyAmeriCorps, there will also be an email that goes to the member and will give the member the link to then complete the member portion of the enrollment form. I'm going to take one more question, and then there's a lot more that have come in, but we will go through those and take another crack at answering questions after Phase 3. So the one more question is, can an applicant be extended an invitation by more than one program? Yes, they can. So obviously the member cannot simultaneously enroll into full-time terms of service, but invitations can be sent by more than one program. So thank you all for the questions. Keep the questions coming. Again, we will not be able to answer all of them, but we'll do our best to answer as many as possible during this hour.
All right. I'm going to jump into Phase 3. Phase 3 is really focused on the Social Security and citizenship verification process. In Phase 2, the member submitted their enrollment form, if you remember. The information included on that form is sent to the Social Security Administration and is either verified automatically or goes through a manual verification process. I want to note that we have stumbled upon the second stopwatch. If programs are required to go through the manual verification process, this will add additional time to the enrollment process that programs should be aware and prepared for. Let's move forward to learn more about this phase. As I mentioned, the portal submits the record to the Social Security Administration, or SSA, as soon as the member completes and saves their section of the enrollment form. SSA will then follow their process to verify the member's citizenship status and Social Security number. Within 3 business days, the portal will be updated with either verified or returned status in the portal. An example is shown here, at the bottom right of your screen. Programs will not receive an email if the member is automatically verified, but they will receive a notice if it is put in returned status. I'm going to sit with the screen just for a moment so you guys have time to read through it. again, if not automatically verified, programs will receive a notification via email to submit additional documentation. We have provided a link, again, to our Code of Federal Regulations that outline what documentation can be gathered to verify citizenship. Additionally, the program may be asked to provide documentation to verify the Social Security number, which can simply be a copy of the Social Security card or documentation that indicates a name change. To submit this documentation, the program must request a secure file link from the hotline. Additional details will be provided on the next slide. If the documentation is sufficient to verify eligibility, the status will be updated to manually verified. If not, the program will again be notified that documentation was not sufficient and will request this again via email. Note that every time documentation is submitted to SSA per our agreement, they have 3 business days to respond, which can add time to the enrollment process. Programs should also account for the additional time it may take to gather member applicant documentation. Here is the form to request a secure file link from the hotline. We have included a couple of best practices for you to consider when providing additional documentation, including what information to include, and if you have multiple documentation requests, to include this all in one email, giving you one single ticket to track. For subgrantees, your prime grantee or state commission can assist you through this process. Again, use them as a resource. All right, we went through that pretty quickly because it was very much focused on the Social Security and citizenship section of enrollment. I know a lot more questions have come through. Again, we're going to try to address as many as possible. I do want to note here again that the criminal history check resources and documents that you can use to really understand that process are available on our website. This is really just focused on the enrollment part of that, so just want to put that out there, but I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to see if we have some more questions to address.
We do indeed, and I will go back a little bit to TrueScreen and FieldPrint. There is a fair amount of confusion among participants about the required versus recommended, and specifically, Liz, around the exemption period. One question from Elaine. If we use TrueScreen and FieldPrint during the exemption period, which as you indicated was a required part of participating in the exemption period, is it required moving forward for new program terms?
Yeah, so the exemption period was an opportunity for grantees to get money and time and resources and to vendors to do rechecks of their individuals in covered positions. So if you took advantage of that, that is great. You are welcome to continue using TrueScreen and FieldPrint after the exemption period, but it is not required. However, I do want to do a caveat real quick. Some commissions I've heard will be requiring it. So again, check with your commission.
All right, thanks. There's also been a couple of questions about ASPs and what's going on with ASPs. Do you want to speak briefly to that, Liz?
Yep, ASP stands for Alternative Search Procedures. All individual ASPs, meaning that you applied specifically on behalf of your grantee or your organization, all of those are going to be expiring at the end of this year. So as of December 31st, 2019, they will be valid, but as of January 1st, 2020, they will no longer be valid. There also are a handful of pre-approved ASPs that are going to expire at the end of this year as well. Starting January 1, 2020, I think only about 3 pre-approved ASPs are going to exist or be valid, and that's for the use of TrueScreen, that's for the use of the National Fingerprint File, NFS program, and then also if you have an existing disability that prohibits you from getting fingerprints done. So those resources are on the Knowledge Network on the NSCHC page.
All right, thanks. Moving on a little bit from criminal history checks to a question about citizenship. Question from Donna. In terms of citizenship status, if an applicant is not a U.S. citizen but is authorized to work in the U.S., is anything additional required, or is that taken care of in the respective background processes? So a couple things, Donna. First of all, being authorized to work in the U.S. is not quite the same as the citizenship requirements to serve as an AmeriCorps member. Members need to be citizens or legal permanent residents or nationals of the United States. So work permit is not necessarily an indication of eligibility. There are specific eligibility documents that are specified in the AmeriCorps regulations that you need to check to make sure that individuals have the correct status. The SSN and citizenship verification process that takes place during this enrollment procedure that you've seen in the presentation that Brittany has provided will take a look at those citizenship considerations and will make a determination of whether the individual is or is not eligible to serve. That being said, it is still your responsibility as a program to do those verifications up front at the beginning when you screen member candidates to make sure that that individual is in fact eligible to serve. Related question from Caitlin. Does the member's citizenship and SSN need to be verified by the member's start date or within that 8-day grace period? Brittany, I'm going to toss that to you to answer because I know you've talked a lot about this timing thing.
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
Sure. So do the citizenship and SSN need to be verified by the member's start date or during the 8-day grace period after the member's start date?
Before you can enroll a member, it needs to be verified, right? So we're I'm gonna scroll back a couple. I think. Oh, actually, no. It's on a future slide where we're gonna indicate in that slide all the dates and where they are, and that those all need to occur before the member's start date. So we're going to get to that very specifically here in this last phase where you are actually going to be in the enrollment form. So it'll be very crystal clear, hopefully, by the end of this presentation. If you still are confused, definitely feel free to reinsert that question and we will address it as clearly as we can by the end of this presentation.
All right, and then the last question we'll do right now, and then we'll let you move on to the next section, Brittany, is about previous terms. If you've had a member who has been serving in a previous term, they may still be serving, what exactly the process looks like. Specifically, can programs issue invitations to members who are still serving in a previous term? The answer is yes, you can issue invitations to members even if they are still serving. What you will not be able to do is press the enroll button. You'll not be able to take an enroll action if the member is still serving. And so a question from Jay, is it the responsibility of the current director to make sure the applicant was exited from a previous program? Fundamentally, of course, it is the responsibility of the previous program to exit the member. The member should be paying attention to whether or not they are exited and should be following up with their previous program director to make sure that that exit action is taken from the previous program before the expected start date in the new program. Let's leave it at that for now. Again, I know there's lots of questions in the box we've not yet answered. Be patient with us. We'll try to answer as many as we can before the end of the hour.
Great. So we are going to dive into this EGrants phase. I already see lots of questions, which is why we are going to go through it step by step. We have made it to what we program officers lovingly call the orange screens, which is you will see in your portal. This is the final phase in EGrants. The steps outlined in the blue box are all referencing what needs to occur on the member enrollment form. These steps need to happen before the member start date and before you click the enrollment button. As noted, the enrollment must be complete 8 calendar days from the member start date. This policy update was sent to the field on April 24th and is accessible on the Managing AmeriCorps grant page that I referenced earlier. This policy update will be in the portal starting in June of 2014. In this phase, we have also provided guidance to the small percentage of member applicants who have previously served and will need to acknowledge a partial award prior to enrollment. Again, I'm going to get into this, dive into this all so that, again, hopefully it's crystal clear as we move forward. The very first step in that blue box that was at the bottom of your flow chart is for staff to verify that the member applicant SSN and citizenship status is in verified or manually verified status. We've provided you in this slide all possible statuses that a member may be in and why. The only way to move forward, again, is if they are in verified or manually verified status. I'm going to pause for just a second so you can read this. Again, this will be available on our Knowledge Network for you to review at your own time and to ask specific questions to your prime grantee, program officer, or state commission if you have them. All right, here is the much anticipated enrollment form. Minus the boxes and arrows that we've obviously included for this presentation, this is what you are going to see in eGrants when you go to enroll a member. We have already discussed SSN and citizenship status indicated in that first box. Below that, you will see the NSCHC certification boxes. If you have not previously done so, you will need to check these boxes to certify that your program has completed and adjudicated the NSOPW check and has initiated the state and/or FBI checks as appropriate for the applicant. When you click Save, the dates to the right will be updated. If you have completed this step earlier in the process, you do not need to recheck and save, as this will update with the current date every time you click that Save Information button. The third step, or the third box, is to enter the member placement information, including start date, program year, program title, service location, and slot type. Note here that the start date cannot be earlier than all of the dates listed above. I'm again going to pause. I know this is an important slide. This is where a lot of the questions are stemming from, so I'm going to give you a moment or two to review this.
And actually, Brittany, while we're sitting on this slide,
sure.
If you could, so there's a fair amount of confusion about what the 8 days are for. So can you maybe just go through it one more time? What does the 8 days mean? What needs to be done prior to those 8 days? What could be done during those 8 days?
Yeah. So enrollment must be complete 8 days from the member start date. Again, I mentioned this policy was sent out on the 24th of April, so just last week. And you can really go through and review all the different terms of the policy from our portal or from our Knowledge Network. But I want to show that in that flow chart, we want you, the Social Security and citizenship needs to be verified or manually verified. The NSCHC boxes must all be checked and completed before the member start date. The member placement information and everything like that needs to be inputted as well. And then you're entering your member start date there, and that's when the enrollment button, if everything above it is accurate, will become active. And again, I'm going to get into this, I think, on the next slide as well. But the enrollment has to be completed 8 calendar days from that member start date. So we're assuming, I'm just going to jump backwards really fast so you can see it, the flow chart. So we're assuming that the criminal history check, we're not assuming, we're requiring that all of the steps in that big blue box have occurred before your member enrollment button can even become active. This is when you're going to put in that member start date, and you have to click enroll 8 days, 8 calendar days from that member start date. So I'm not sure, I'm hoping that that's clear. Again, I'm going to talk about this in the next slide as well. But really, hopefully this visual of the flow chart gives you a better idea of that. The enrollment form, again, you guys will have access to this. I know the print is pretty small, but you'll be able to look at it on your own computers in your own time as well. All right, here in this slide, we have zoomed in on the very bottom portion of the enrollment page. Once you have entered all of the information correctly, the Enroll Member button is going to become active. All information can be entered ahead of time except for the member start date and slot type. So if you save information and leave this page, the next time you log on, you're going to have to re-enter the member start date and the slot type. If all information is correct and the button becomes active, you can click Enroll. Again, the box is a different shape, but this is the exact same blue box that was on that flow chart, so it shows you the different steps that need to occur before this enrollment button becomes active. All right, I'm going to move on. Now, as I mentioned, there is an additional step that a few of you may need to complete. If you click Enroll for a member who has previously served the equivalent of 2 full-time education awards, or as a result of the slot type that you entered will now exceed 2 full-time slot awards, a notice is going to show up when you click the Enroll button that is highlighted here on your screen. This note indicates that an email notification was sent to the member applicant to request acknowledgement of a partial award. You will also see in your pending enrollments workbasket that the member enrollment status is now in pending partial award acknowledgement. Because this member applicant has an additional step, the member is not yet enrolled even though you already hit the enrollment button. The member applicant must follow the next couple of steps that I will outline in the following slides before you're able to enroll the member officially. Continuing on with the partial award acknowledgement, this is an example of what the member is going to see if they need to acknowledge a partial award. The email will indicate the value of education awards the member has previously received and provides the partial amount they are still eligible for. This will equate to a specific dollar amount. The member will need to click on the link provided in the email, which will bring them back to their enrollment form in My AmeriCorps. You can see the link kind of towards the bottom of that email screenshot we provided. At the bottom of the enrollment form, the member is going to be asked to either accept or decline the partial award. If declined, this is an indication that the member is choosing to not be enrolled into your term of service. If they accept, EGrants will automatically update the member enrollment status to partial award acknowledged, as shown here in this second image. Once this is complete, you'll be able to go back into the member enrollment form in EGrants. Again, you're going to have to enter the member slot type and start date again because these 2 items are not able to be saved, and you'll be able to click Enroll. Okay. As Sarah mentioned earlier in the presentation, we have provided a list of things for you to look at if the enrollment button does not become active. Obviously, checking the SSN and citizenship status, again, has to be in verified or manually verified status. The NSCHC certifications, remember, dates must be on or before the entered start date. You are going to want to check that start date. There's a list of things there to consider. And finally, if you determine that all the above is correct and you are not sure why EGrants would be preventing you from enrolling your member applicant, you may contact the National Service Hotline. I'm going to move on to the next slide, and then we will probably open it up for questions. But
We're actually just about out of time, so I think we will probably not have much more time for questions.
Okay.
But let's talk about resources.
Sure. So here are some resources for you to utilize. For For new programs, hopefully you're still with us. For existing grantees, hope that we've provided you with as clear guidance as we possibly can for this process. Again, it's accessible after this presentation. Subgrantees, you should receive specific training from your prime grantees or state commissions to help you with this process. Everyone has access to our Managing AmeriCorps Grants webpage where these resources will be uploaded. Some of them already have been. So you can move through this presentation and the flow chart and the PowerPoint all at your own pace. I'm going to throw it over to Sarah to see if she has any closing remarks. But I definitely thank you for your participation and for your attention. And please, like I said, reach out to Prime Grantee, State Commission, and your program officers if you have them with further questions.
Yeah, so I want to really appreciate all of the very strong participation in today's webinar. I know there have been a lot of questions that have gone by that we have not been able to answer during this presentation. Thank you to those of you who are conversing in the chat box and actually providing some guidance back and forth. That kind of peer sharing is great. Remember that the source of information for all things, if you are a direct grantee or a state commission, please reach out to your CNCS program officer or grants officer. If you are a sub-grantee, please reach out to your state commission or to your prime grantee for guidance related to all of these topics. There is a lot in this presentation. So again, these resources will be available to you. The recording will be posted as soon as we have it processed. We will post this PowerPoint as well on our website. The flowchart is actually already there. So all of these resources are going to be available to you in addition to the resources that you see on the slide right here with the web links. So please feel free to access those. And thank you so much for your participation. We really appreciate your engagement with this and hope that you will be able to make good use of these resources moving forward. So thank you so much for joining today.